Good morning, everyone. On this today's webinar on sanction for prosecution under PC Act by Mr. Pradeep Mehta, sir. Uh, Today's session on sanction or prosecution under PC Act will be taken care by Pradeep Mehta, sir. Like we've been doing this webinars from a long time with Punjab and Haryana Judiciary. The format will remain the same. Mr. Mehta, sir, would take the session. Will share all this information through his PPT and his voice in the backdrop. And most of your questions will be answered. Considering this topic is very vast, Sir and I, we were talking, and Sir will try his best to shrink it down, because this session can go for 3 to 4 hours as well, only for detailing. So Sir will, try to squeeze it down in 45 to 50 minutes. However, most of your questions that you might have on this topic, you might want to put it right now. My suggestion is that you please listen to Sir for at least half an hour. Most of the questions would anyways be addressed. Sir has expertise on this, so he already know that what are the common questions that may come in anyone's mind. So we'll be addressing those. In case your questions are not answered, then you in the question answer round, which will be dealt after Sir's detailing, after Sir's presentation, then you can simply ask this question. I would welcome Sir. Sir has been spent his major part of his career in the Vigilance Bureau and Department, and he retired as a joint director of the department. After getting retired as joint director, he then decided to serve the community by joining as a faculty member in Chandigarh Judicial Academy, and currently he's been doing that. And because today's session is also organized by Chandigarh Judicial Academy in collaboration with SSC Online, so Sir is just gonna go as a faculty member in this session. Without any further ado, I would request Pradeep Mehta, sir, to please start the session and help us understand this topic, sir. Sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and I welcome you to the session Prosecution Sanction under Prevention of Corruption Act in Chandigarh Judicial Academy. As you are aware that this is a very important part of the Act and the cases which are there under the Prevention of Corruption Act. Because without this, the court cannot take the cognizance. So I will try to cover up the most of the important parts which are there in this section. And however, whatever the queries or questions, I will be trying to answer those questions later after we are over with the discussion. Now I start. Now, first of all, what is sanction? The sanction is a conscious decision, I will say, of the competent authority who is there to grant it in order to that the court may frame the charge against the accused. It is a safeguard, as many of the legislations have been provided with a safeguard regarding, say, complaint or a sanction or some sort of requirement which is to be fulfilled before the court can take the cognizance. And this sanction is one of the safeguards, and in Prevention of Corruption Act added so that with the object of the fact that the authority who is there at the helm of affairs to grant this sanction can go through the facts of the case and to decide before the sending the case to the court that whether it is a fit case for trial in the evidence which has been collected by the prosecution. It is considered to be the safeguard for the accused who is not guilty, who sometimes have the wrath of the other employees because he is very honest or is doing the work honestly. So when we talk of this sanction, we have to look into the provisions which are there of the law for this. But it very important thing which is there in this sanction is that it is a safeguard and a clog on taking of the cognizance. But nonetheless, the purpose is that the person who is guilty should be should be protected, and the case should not be lodged against him. So, in this situation, I will discuss the provision which is there of law in PC Act. In Manzoor Ali Khan versus Union of India, while discussing the requirement of this sanction, it has been held by the Supreme Court that the requirement of the section has a salutary object of protecting an innocent public servant against unwarranted and malafide prosecution. But this is no tolerance to corruption which undermines core constitutional values. At the same time, need to prosecute the punish and corrupt is no ground to deny the protection to the honest. Now, provision of law under PC Act is section 19, and simultaneously I will like to refer to section 197 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, which also speaks of sanction for prosecution of the public servants. Why I am referring to 197? Because of the fact that sometimes under PC Act also there are composite sanctions. A composite sanction is said to be that when the provisions of IPC are there and provisions of PC Act are also there, and they are so interconnected that in order to frame the charge under PC Act, the charge under IPC or other sections for which the sanction is required under 197 is also necessary. I would like to discuss this under these heads as to who is a public servant, what should be the form of sanction, what is a grant of sanction, a discretion, then sanction on the life of draft sanction, then authority who is competent to grant sanction, grant of sanction and cognizance by court. In complaint cases, what is the procedure? What is the time period to grant sanction, then review of sanction and validity of sanction. I think these topics will cover the whole of the basic idea, give you the basic idea of the total law with regard to the sanction. Now, who is a public servant? You know, before the passing of the Act of 1988, under the old Act of Prevention of Corruption Act, this definition of the public servant was taken from the section 21 of the IPC. The same was the definition which was incorporated in the PC Act. But with the intent of coming into force, the Act of 1988, the new definition under section 2C was added. And almost both the definitions are enumerative, saying that any person in service, then in any service in the pay of local authority, who is in pay of corporation, like that. But only a new class, which is very important, and class 2C8, that any person who holds an office by virtue of which he is authorized to be required to perform any public duty. This was added. This has widened the definition to a very vast extent, because what it says, any person who is holding an office, and by virtue of that he is authorized or required to perform any public duty. And whereas the public duty has been defined in 2B, which means a duty in the discharge of which the state, the public or the community at large has an interest, nothing else. Now see here, one thing more is there, that if we read the explanation 1 to this section 2C, persons falling under any of the above subclasses are public servants, whether appointed by the government or not. So if we sum up all the three, so it becomes, even if a person is appointed to any office, maybe by the government or not, and he is to perform any duty in which the public community at large or the state, they are interested, then he is a public servant. Now for this, we have to go to do these two things, one office and the other public duty. Now, while office was interpreted by the Supreme Court in P.V. Narasimha Rao's case, it was held that, as held by Lord Atkin in Macmillan versus Macmillan's case, it was held that the case was, I think, of 1942, yes, 1942, in which it was held that the meaning of the office is referable to a position which has existence independent of the person who fills up the same and which is required to be filled up in succession by the successive holders. It may be by election, it may be otherwise. But if the person who is filling that office is having a different existence than himself, and the office is to be filled by succession, that is office as see contemplated in this definition. And whereas the public duty that has been defined, I say not defined but discussed in CBI Bank Securities and Fraud Cell versus Ramesh Gilley in 2016 by the Supreme Court. It is said to be a performance of public duty by a person who is holding office which requires authorization to perform as duty is sine qua non of the definition of public servant contained in PC Act. The expression office has been defined and public duty appearing in the relevant part of PC Act would therefore require a close understanding, because it is more or less of public character. What has been said in this authority, that it is a public character which is to be looked into. Though in this case they have not said more than this. Now coming to this, I think even the office of SGPC president will be falling under this, to my mind. And now coming to the next part, form of sanction. If we read PC Act or the CRPC or any other law, no form of sanction is prescribed. It can be a two-line sanction, it can be a detailed sanction containing every part, every act, but what it implies application of mind only. If the application of mind is clear from the sanction order, which represents a deliberate decision of the competent authority, I think the sanction will be valid. But no question arises that what record was considered. If that is to be seen, that as to what record was considered, the sanction must contain, of course, that what was the record which was sent to the officer or the competent authority. Otherwise, if the sanction is not disclosing it, it must have to be proved in the court by extraneous evidence. Then the material which is to be considered is, since it is an administrative function, the most important part is that the officer against whom the sanction is to be given is not required to be heard by the competent authority. What is required to be seen by the authority is what are the facts placed before, whether in those facts, whether the offense is made out. Now, so it has been held in case of Manzoor Ali Khan's, which we have discussed, that the question of giving an opportunity to the public servant before grant of sanction does not arise. The sanctioning authority has to see only as to whether the facts would prima facie constitute the offence. The competent authority cannot embark upon an inquiry to judge the truth of the allegations on the basis of which the representation of which has been started with the representation of the accused. And it is, if there is any doubt with regard to the grant of sanction with the sanctioning authority, he can ask it from the authority which has sent the case to him, but he cannot ask the IO as to explain the matter, because in that case it has been held that the time limit which is there fixed by the Vineet Narayan's case will not be adhered to. Now, there are two cases which are there, State of Karnataka and Amir Jan and Ashok Kumar versus CBI versus Ashok Kumar Agarwal, in which it has been said that order grant of sanction must be demonstrative of the fact that there had been a proper application of mind on the part of the sanctioning authority. And in CBI versus Ashok Kumar Agarwal's case, it has been said that since section 91 and 92 of the Evidence Act are as to the contents of document and should be proved by the document itself, so it is always better that the sanction should be detailed one, disclosing every part of the document which has been considered while grant of the sanction. Then also a very important authority is there of our own High Court, Punjab and Haryana High Court, in which Honorable Mr. Justice A.B. Chaudhary has said that the sanctioning authority should be called even if he is retired in order to prove the sanction, because it is very relevant. When he will be coming to the court, he will be able to explain that what records he has considered, which he has mentioned in the sanction, and apart from it, that he has applied his mind to all of those documents and have then only come to the conclusion that yes, sanction in this case is required to be granted and the person needs to be prosecuted. This authority has not been reported to my knowledge, but it has been circulated in whole of Punjab and Haryana and Chandigarh that it is to be meticulously followed, and directions have been given in this case. Now, grant of sanction at discretion. This is a very important part. No, it is a discretion. Why it is that the decision of the authority who is giving or refusing the sanction and the parameters which have been sent to him, applying the mind to the records, that cannot be called into question in the court. So it is totally the discretion of the authority. In one case, which is Mansukh Lal Bittal Das Chauhan versus State of Gujarat, 1997 7 SCC 622, High Court of Gujarat gave a direction to grant the sanction. Supreme Court in this case has said that by issuing a direction, the High Court has closed the area which was there not to grant sanction. So his discretion was taken as to the one part, and he was only left with the part that he is to grant sanction under the directions of the High Court, which is not available to the High Court. It is very important. Then, but simultaneously in this authority, it was said that as the court cannot sit as a court of review or appeal, but definitely if the answer to the questions is not right in legal or in a affirmative way, then the High Court can pass an order and look into the, say whether the sanction has been properly issued or not. This has been that whether the decision-making authority has exceeded its power, whether he has committed any error of law, whether he has committed a breach of the rules of natural justice, then reached a decision which no reasonable person or reasonable tribunal would have reached, and is whether it is abuse of process of law. If all these answers are affirmative, then definitely the court is having a concern with regard to the passing of the sanction order. You know, in this 30, in one para, Lord Danning has been referred saying that if a decision-making body is influenced by considerations which ought not to have influenced it, and or fails to take the consideration in account the material which he ought to have taken into account, then definitely the court is to interfere. To what extent it is to interfere, it depends. But because a direction is to be fairly exercised, definitely it is can be seen by the court in these parameters or in these ratio of this which we have discussed in this authority. Now, constitutionality, whether this is constitutional, if the total discretion is there, that yes, the authority can refuse or grant the sanction, then it is unconstitutional. That it is only that in some cases it may be granted, it may be political decisions or otherwise that he can refuse it. And it is should be stuck as unconstitutional. But in Mansoor Ali Khan versus Union of India, which we have referred earlier also, the Supreme Court has said that no, it is not unconstitutional. You can go through this authority, a very detailed authority, and makes a good reading. Both these authorities, if we have to find out that what is the discretion and how it is to be exercised, I think these two authorities are very good, and you please read it. Law will be very clear to you. Then sanction on the lines of draft sanction. Invariably, the draft is sent for grant of sanction. It is for the facilitation of the authority that the authority may go through the draft and say pass an order on the lines of the draft sanction. And sometimes it has been seen that verbatim the same is typed and it is signed. Of course, it is there. But now, whether if the sanction is on the lines of draft sanction, whether it in itself make the sanction void or wrong. So the answer to these has been answered by Indu Bhushan Chatterjee versus State of West Bengal in AIR 1958 Supreme Court 148 and CS Krishnamurthy versus State of Karnataka 2005 for SCC 81. In both of these authorities, Supreme Court has said that from the reading of the evidence of the sanctioning authority, it is clear that despite the sending of the draft sanction and giving the sanction on the lines of draft, the sanctioning authority has specifically stated in the court that he has applied its mind to the facts of the case which was sent, and it is only thereafter that the sanction has been granted. So there is no case that the sanction should be held as invalid. Now, this is the emphasis which has been supplied in these two authorities and which has been taken into consideration by our own High Court, by Justice A.B. Chaudhary, that yes, the sanctioning authority should be kept. Because this will also go a long way to prove that sanction was accorded even this draft was sent after going through the record properly. Now, very important part is authority competent to grant sanction. Because if the competent authority is not there who has granted the sanction will not be valid. Now, who is competent authority? Now, Section 19 says that in case of it speaks of three things. There are three parts of section which is now amended. That is, in case of a person who is or was at the time of the omission of offence employed in connection with the affairs of union. Now, first thing, employed in connection with the affairs of union, and is not removable from his office, save with the sanction of the central government. Very important. Which is not there in 197. 197 simply says who is employed in connection with the affairs of union, then central government. But here a rider has been placed and is not removable from his office, say by or with the sanction of the central government. Then that government, meaning thereby central government. But if the person is employed in connection with the affairs of the state and is not removable from his office, say by with the sanction of state government, then of that government. Whereas in 197, it is simply is employed in connection with the affairs of the state. Not removable part is not there. And the third, because is there in case of any other person or authority of the authority competent to remove him from his office. Any other person. Why? These two cover only the gazetted officers. The appointments of whom are there by the government, which is the protection given only on 197. Because under 197, other employees who are non-gazetted are not given the protection. But here under 19 PC Act, every employee, he may be a peon, he may be a chief secretary, every person has been given the protection. So in case of other person, authority competent to remove him from his office. Now, if we read all the three subsections, the only thrust is on the removable from the office. Who can remove him from the office which had been violated? So this is very important. The repeated use of the word office in this section connotes the office which has been misused by the officer to his benefit. Then only that officer. Now, coming back to part A and B, removable, employed in connection with the affairs of the union and not removable except with the sanction of the central government. Then central government, employed in connection with the affairs of the state and not removable with the sanction of the state government. Then state government. But now, if a person has been appointed in affairs of the state, but he is not removable by the state government, he is removable by the central government, who will be competent to grant the sanction? Very important, particularly in IAS and IPS officers, because they are employed in connection with the affairs of the state, but removable from their service only by the central government. So here the distinction comes that when sanction under 197 is required for an IAS officer, then the state government is competent to grant the sanction. But when the case under 19 PC Act comes and it is of IAS or IPS officer, then of course the competent authority will be central government, because is removable from his office save with the sanction of the central government. So I think I have made clear this part. Then 197. But here now, what is the major change which has been brought about by the amendment which has been carried out recently? That is that section 19 protection has been extended to the persons who were public servants. Earlier was not there, were not there in the section. It was only if he is a public servant. Once he demits the office, the protection goes under the old act. But here even the demittance of the office will not take the umbrella of the protection from his head, or from over his head, and he will be protected with the protection under section 19C, 19 PC Act. Now, this section, subsection 19(2), makes it amply clear where for any reason whatsoever any doubt arises as to whether the previous sanction is required under would be of a central government or state government or any other authority, such section shall be given by the government or the authority which would have been competent to remove the public servant from his office at the time when the offence was alleged to have been committed. So it also clarifies the point of IAS and IPS officers that since they are removable by the central government, only the central government is competent to grant the sanction. Now, grant of sanction and cognizance of the court. This is very material also, because when we talk of a composite sanction or a case which is there under one IPC provisions and provisions of PC Act, then this gains very importance, great importance. Why? Because Section 19 PC Act says earlier there were 5 sections. Now Section 10 have been deleted and only the sanction is required if there is an offense under 7, 11, 13 and 15. Earlier it was 10 also. Now if there are these 4 sections under which the court is asked to take the cognizance, of course, since it starts from the non-obstantive words, no court shall take the cognizance. Yes, of course, the sanction order is to be seen at the first instance. But if we talk of 197, that of course says no court shall take the cognizance, but the offences are not prescribed. They are while acting or purported to act in discharge of his official duty, which is open to arguments that whether this act was in discharge of duty or purported discharge of duty is a matter of fact. Now, this makes a distinction in both the cases that yes, when you have to frame the charge under Section 19 PC Act, under PC Act, and looking to the sanction under Section PC Act is must. It is very necessary that at first instance, while taking the cognizance, you should see that there is a sanction. And when we talk of sanction, it implies a valid sanction, not invalid sanction. Competent authority, everything. But if we talk of 197, it says, while acting or purporting to act in discharge of official duty. I may say that it was not a discharge of public duty, and the accused may take the plea that yes, it was in discharge of public duty. Sanction is must. The prosecution should be thrown out of the court. I should be discharged. But the court should frame the charge in this case without the sanction, because this is a mixed question of law and facts. And without deciding that whether the act was in purported discharge or in discharge of official duty, you cannot decide that whether sanction is necessary or no. So this is very important, and so has been held by in case of Prakash Singh Badal versus State of Punjab by Supreme Court, in which it was held that question relating to need of sanction under 197 of the code is not necessarily to be considered as soon as the complaint is lodged and on the allegations contained therein. The question may arise at any stage of the proceedings. The question whether sanction is necessary or not may have to be determined from stage to stage. Yes, if during the trial, in course of trial, you find that no, it was an act which was in purported discharge of duty, you can stop the proceedings there, ask the prosecution or the police to go and bring the sanction, and then only the case can proceed. Otherwise, bye-bye. Now, here I would like to tell you something regarding the complaint cases, because the major change which has been brought in Section 19 regarding the see how the complaint is to proceed is with regard to the complaint cases. Earlier to it, the amendment, as per the authority laid down in Anil Kumar and versus M.K. Ayappa, it was necessary that whenever a complaint is to be filed, it should be accompanied with the prosecution sanction. And that is why the prosecution sanction was being applied to the sanctioning authority, and sanctioning authority was sitting over the sanction for long times, as was evident from the case of Subramanian Swamy from Raja M. Raja, in which the Supreme Court, of course, has laid down that yes, since the sanction was granted during the pendency, so we don't want to say anything. But yes, of course, they have held it that sanction should be granted according to the directions issued in Vanitha Narayan's case, within 3 months or plus 1 month if it requires a consultation with the legal authorities. Now, the provision has been added that a person who is to file a complaint cannot request the sanctioning authority for grant of sanction, and the request to the sanctioning authority can be made only by the police or an investigating officer or other law enforcement agency. No private individual can make any request. Yes, he can make a request if he has filed a complaint before the competent court of jurisdiction for the alleged offences in which the public servant is to be prosecuted. And the court, after passing through the stage of 200 and 202 and has not dismissed the complaint under 203 and has directed the complainant to obtain the sanctions for prosecution against the public servant for further proceedings, then at that stage that person can apply to the competent authority with the certificate of the court that yes, he has been so directed because the complaint filed by him against that public servant has not been dismissed and it has a cause prima facie. Only then you will be, summoning the accused under 204. So now here, a departure has also been made in the amendment to the effect that when we discuss that authority in which we have held that no opportunity will be given to the public officer against whom the sanction is to be accorded of hearing, or nor inquiry will be initiated. But here, in this case, if this is so, then a sanction is not to be accorded unless the public servant has been provided with an opportunity of being heard by the authority. Why it is so? Why it is so? The question may rise in mind. Because when the police is investigating, they have heard him. But here, when even the court has come to the conclusion that there is a substance, he has not summoned him, he has not heard him. So it is important that hearing should be provided. But of course, while granting the sanction, only the material which have been submitted by the complainant in the complaint which has been gone through by the court is to be acted upon. Now, validity of sanction, this is also very important part. Why, when we talk of that sanction should be accompanied under PC Act, it implies valid sanction. Why then that a valid sanction should be there, that objection to the validity can be seen at a later stage. We will discuss. In Prakash Singh Badal's case, now say, if the case is filed, it is accompanied with the sanction. The court is to see that whether after going through the fact sanction has been granted, prima facie he is a competent authority. Of course, objection has been taken. Objection can be taken by the accused. But if it can be decided only on the basis of the arguments, then it's okay. But if it cannot be decided on the basis of arguments and evidence is to be required, that who was in fact competent to remove him from office, then of course the charge is to be framed. So distinction has to be observed between the absence of sanction and invalidity in sanction on the account of non-application of mind. The first question is to be raised at the threshold of the trial, whereas the second question can be during trial. In PK Pradhan case also, it was held that evidence is to be led in court to come to the conclusion that the sanction was not properly accorded. So in these two cases, though it has been said in subsections that it should be taken at the first instance, explanation, which is thereafter for. But of course, in some cases, when the sanction is there, the court is to frame charge if the evidence is required that whether it was properly accorded. Then the very important thing that suppose the sanction is there, charge has been framed, trial has taken place, and during the trial it comes to or it surfaces that the sanction granted was not by competent person or it was invalid due to some other reasons. Sorry, may I take water? Thank you. Now, if this is so, then definitely the sanction will be looked at the end, that whether it is proper or not. Now, what is the right course? If subsequently it is found that sanction was not proper, it was invalid, acquittal? No. Discharge. A discharge is required if subsequently, even after the full-fledged trial, it is found that the sanction was invalid. Sanction was not proper. Why? Because it will be beyond jurisdiction to have that trial. This has been so held in these two cases, State of Karnataka versus C. Nagarjuna Swamy, 2005-8 SCC 370, and Nanjappa versus State of Karnataka, 2015-14 SCC 186. In this case, in these cases, it has been held that the person should be discharged. Otherwise, too, it has been held that even if they are acquitted, that will not bar a trial under 300. Clearly laid down, because the trial is not proper trial. It is a sham. Not giving any right to the accused under section 300. So this is very important aspect at which stage the objection with regard to the validity of the sanction can be discussed or taken into account. Now, time period of grant sanction. I will be just finishing it in 2 or 3 minutes. Now, time period to grant sanction is not mentioned in the section. Earlier, I will say. Only by intent of authorities, Vineet Narayan versus State, then Dr. Subramaniam Swamy versus Dr. Manmohan Singh and another, and then Manzoor Ali Khan's case. It was laid down that it is 3 months and 1 month extra can be given if there is a legal consultation required. And in Manzoor Ali's case, the direction was specifically given to the Parliament by the Supreme Court that effort should be made to make a law that it should be done in only 3 months and at the most in 4 months. And if it is not done so, provision should be there that thereafter it will be deemed to have been granted, and within 15 days thereafter, from the expiry of the period, a case can be filed. But now, under the amended provisions, what they have done? They have added 3 provisos. First proviso, that the appropriate government, whenever they are in receipt of, they will try to dispose of within 3 months. Try to, because what the word has been used, make an endeavor to convey the decision on such proposal within a period of 3 months. They have not said it is a must. Now then, 1 month has additionally been given when a consultation is required. But with regard to that part which was there as a direction in Manzoor Ali's case, that 15 days he should have been competent to file a complaint or a case without the sanction, has not been taken care of. And further they have said that central government may, for the purpose of sanction of prosecution, a public servant prescribe such guidelines as it considers necessary. So this is what they have done in the amended law, and the law now as it stands today is that every endeavor is to be made by the government agency or the competent authority to convey the decision within 3 months from the receipt of the proposal. But nothing if not received any decision. Then review of sanction. Last and the foremost, most important, that whether there is a power of review with the sanctioning authority. See, it is there, it is agreed that once it is an administrative act, no review is there to be of administrative act. But, and simultaneously, when the sanctioning authority takes a decision, either way, it becomes functus officio. Then can an authority which is now functus officio can review its own decision? Doubt is there. But in Muhammad Iqbal Bhatti's case, which was decided in 2019-17 SCC 92, Supreme Court has laid down that, of course, when there is no new material collected by the prosecution agency, which can be looked into to grant the sanction, then the authority is functus officio and there cannot be review of that decision. But what about if the new material has come? Yes, they have said yes, they can. If new material is there, they can definitely review the order in view of that new material. But now, if new material is not there, but earlier material which has been sent has not been taken into consideration correctly, or some material which need not to have been taken into account had been taken into account without taking into that account which is there, which has been sent earlier, then of course this has said that material which was sent and had not taken into consideration will also serve as new material. That will serve as new material. And another case is state of Himachal Pradesh versus Nishant. He is a drug inspector. Sareen, Nishant Sareen. Please, it is not unintelligently has not been written. It is Nishant Sareen. Please note down. State of Himachal Pradesh versus Nishant Sareen, 2010-14 SCC 527, in which again that has been reiterated. But here, as a footnote, a very important piece has been added. I would like to read along with: sanction refused by competent authority, remedy available to prosecution agency. Investigating agency might have a legitimate grievance about order refusing to grant sanction. Investigating agency ought to have challenged order of sanctioning authority. Now, a leverage has been provided by this authority to the investigating agency to challenge the order of sanctioning authority if there is a legitimate grievance. Now, what is a legitimate grievance? We have just discussed it when we were discussing the case of earlier case of this Mansukh Lal Bittul Das Chauhan, in which they have laid down 5 conditions which we have discussed, referring to Lord Denning also, that yes, in that case court can definitely and should look to. So coupled with this, the prosecution agency can go for a challenge that the authority has not provided the sanction properly and has not considered the material. Of course, there cannot be a direction in view of that authority that sanction be granted, but definitely direction can be that grant the sanction or refuse it by going through this record only. And the last authority which we like to cite is Surtaram Sharma of our own High Court, in which they have specifically laid down where fresh material has not been produced, and the power can exercise only if irrelevant consideration has taken place into account to earlier order and relevant considerations have been ignored. So thank you very much. Now you can ask if any question is there or any doubt is there in your mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll just see what all question that we have till now.
Yes.
So just a minute.
Yes.
Just so this question was asked a few minutes back. I think it's been like 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So the question is sanction necessary before passing order to proceed against accused in the complaint case?
See, is sanction necessary to proceed in a complaint case?
So,
Under the new provision, so far as under the old law was there, it was necessary. But since now there is no case which can be now filed under old law, every case is to be taken care by of a new law. When the complaint is filed, the court will proceed without the sanction. It may be under 197, it may be under section 19. But of course, if the court, after proceeding under section 200 and 202, as I have just addressed now, just recently, comes to the conclusion that the complaint is not to be dismissed under section 203, definitely the court will have the idea to proceed under 204. Then they can ask the person to bring the sanction. I will show you the amended provision to him by reading this provision. Part 1. Such person has filed a complaint in a competent court about the alleged offence for which the public servant is sought to be prosecuted, and the court has not dismissed the complaint under section 203 of the Code of Criminal Procedure and directed the complainant to obtain the sanction for prosecution against the public servant for further proceedings. Now, at that stage, the further proceedings will be stopped and the complainant will be asked to bring the sanction. He will be applying the sanction to the competent authority. The competent authority, after providing an opportunity, will be deciding the case. And if it decides the case, then of course, if sanction is granted, sanction is brought before the court, the case will proceed. But if not, no procedure, the case will not be proceeded further. I think, is it clear to the sir?
So I think I think this question was by Gurbir Singh. Mr. Gurbir Singh, if the question has been answered, please let us know in the chat option. Otherwise, we'll proceed to the next question. So something related to a similar question that we spoke about just a minute back about sanction.
Sure.
But now the question is, can sanction be challenged by a third party?
No. No, not at all. Clear in this aspect. Sanction cannot be challenged even by the accused, but to talk of third party.
Only by
accused.
the
No, accused can't challenge it. It is not a document which can be challenged.
Okay, sir.
Is it clear? Is it clear, sir?
Yes, sir. And I think I got a message from Mr. Gurbir Singh, who had asked a question about the first question. So he said that he got his answer and he's thanking you for that, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Gurbir.
So moving to the next question, sir. This question is from Amit Sharon, sir. Amit Sharon, sir, has been like a very regular on these webinars, and he's very
Yes, I know him. I know him, intelligent officer, I will say.
So Amit Sharon sir's question is that he's already made a statement beforehand. He's like it might be slightly digressing from the topic under the discussion of paradigmatic the current scenario. So the question is, when threat of contracting COVID-19 looms large, when precautionary measures can be taken while preparation of inventory in the court, more particularly when the investigation machinery is not sufficiently sanitized to get seized contract. I think, sir, this is not to the pertaining to the.
This is PC Act. This is not PC Act. This is NDPS Act.
Yes.
See, so, NDPS Act, so far as I will answer, no doubt, it is of NDPS Act. See, the preparation of inventory is mandatory under section 52A. Because what is the purpose of preparing the inventory? That even tomorrow, if the case property is destroyed, then that inventory, taking of the sample and the other parts will serve as a primary evidence. Though I can't go in detail because it's not concerning the topic, but I say that yes, of course, it should be complied with.
I think, sir, we should move to the next question.
Yes, please.
It says how a magistrate is to proceed on the first date of receiving the complaint against a public servant. Should he go for recording preliminary evidence and wait for the consultation on the point of necessity to take a sanction, or straight away ask for sanction?
No. See, very clearly what we have discussed just now is if the complaint is filed, so leave the law which was earlier to the amendment in 2018. Now, under the new act, PC Act, if the complaint is filed, the magistrate here will be additional session judge minimum who has been notified as special judge under PC Act, because that is having the original jurisdiction as a magistrate. Of course, he is to proceed when a complaint is filed. Under CRPC, it is only under 200 and cognizance is taken, and see procedure which is to be followed before sending it to the sanction is if he decides not to dismiss the complaint under 203, meaning thereby he has to start with 200 and 202. If so, it is not proper. If after 200, recording of the evidence of the complainant and the other witnesses which are there present with him on the first date, he comes to the conclusion that from the very facts which have been brought on record on the very first day, he is to proceed under 204. Evidence has been sufficiently given that yes, there is prima facie offence made out against the said accused, and he is not to dismiss that complaint. So instead of going under 202, he can, yes, he can direct that you go and bring the sanction. But he will have to record that he is satisfied that this complaint is not to be dismissed under 203. Sir.
Sir, thank you so much, sir, for
welcome.
Next question is from AD Mahajan, sir. First of all, he is conveying his regards for thank you for detailing us such a wonderful session.
I'm thankful, Mahajan, sir. I'm thankful.
The question is, after amendment in the complaint case, whether a complainant can challenge the order of competent authority refusing sanction? If so, before which court?
Yes, this is a very, very important question. Now see, when we discuss the two authorities, one, this Mansukh Lal Bittal Das Chauhan, and other is Nishant Sareen, I think he can get the answer from it. If some material has been used which is not to be used, because see, undoubtedly it is a discretion, but this discretion is to be exercised very fairly. It is a sacrosanct act on the part of the sanctioning authority. He is to apply his mind to the allegations, that whether in those facts sanction is to be granted, whether the case will be successful, whether those facts are in fact actually coming from the record. All these facts, if are not shown, and he is having any grievance, and he comes to know that yes, no, here I will again refer to the part, I will just show you.
Sure.
This slide which is there, provided further that in case of request on the person other than police officer or an officer of an investigating agency or other law enforcement agency, the appropriate government or the authority shall not accord sanction to prosecute a public without providing an opportunity of being heard to the concerned public servant. Now see, this opportunity is to be granted to the public servant. If something is said by him, and that what has been said by him is borne out from record, he can refuse the sanction. This is for to know the part of the accused. What he is to say about that. Now say, take an example. If I will make it more clear with an example, say there is a person who is having a tube well in the field. Clear? He is taking the connection by making a Kundi connection on the electricity wires. The SDO has stopped him several times that you should not put this Kundi on the wires, and has fined him several times. That is official record. And one fine day, a complaint is lodged that he has accepted 5,000 rupees as bribe in order to provide the electric connection to me. Right? And sanction is sought. And then he is heard, and from the record, it is clear that this SDO has fined him for several times for making a Kundi connection. Now see, what is there? A motive is there. A falseness is there. Then the sanction can be refused. But if, now what I say, if apart from that there is no such a record and the sanctioning authority starts with an inquiry, departmental inquiry, and he's asked to bring some fine evidence, and on the basis of that inquiry he decides, that will be wrong. He can challenge it before the court of law. That no, the court has found a prima facie case in my favor. It may be decided or may not be decided. Mandamus may be given or may not be given under 226. But yes, he can.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Another question about the granting, about the sanction. Now, this question is about the authority which grants the sanction. The question is that if the authority granting sanction is required to appear in the court to prove the sanction and to face the court cross-examination.
As I have emphasized the need by referring to the C.S. Krishnamurti and Indu Bhushan Chatterjee's case, that it is always better that sanctioning authority should come into the witness box invariably to prove the sanction. But now, as per the authority given by Honorable Mr. Justice A.B. Chaudhary of Punjab and Haryana High Court, in Jaswant Singh versus State, directions have been issued to all the states, all the districts of both the states, including Chandigarh, that effort, not only effort, the sanctioning authority should be brought to the court by summoning him, and examination of that authority is must. This is the last part of the sanction. I am devoid of time, otherwise I would have read it. Or you can ask the person who has made the question to go through that authority, the last directions which have been given by the court.
Yes, sir. So I think, sir, this is certainly the question, and you've answered completely in black and white. So I'm sure the member who has asked the question has got the answer. So, with permission, moving to the next question, sir.
Please.
This question is about composite sanction. The member is asking, in case of composite sanction is silent about PC Act allegations or vice versa without specifically declining the same, what shall be the repercussion for the allegation for which it is silent?
Under PC Act, if I'm not wrong.
Under PC Act.
Under PC Act. See, if I will ask all officers to go through the sanction orders which are passed by the authorities. It is written that I, being competent authority to grant the sanction against this and this officer, I grant sanction under the sections such and such of IPC and such of PC Act. Now he is silent as to the act which is there made out from the facts. This is the proposition. Now simultaneously they are writing it and any other offense which he has committed under these acts while performing that transaction. So it is open because you know here what is there. sometimes the police, we are not bound. When we frame the charge, we are not bound by the sections which are referred by the police in the challan. Sometimes that offense is not made out and some other offense is made out. Now, since the challan has been sent to the sanctioning authority to grant sanction in those sections, they are writing those sections specifically and simultaneously writing these words and any other section which he might have committed, under which he might have committed any offense, okay, while doing that transaction. That gives a handle to frame the charge under other sections also. So you can frame the charge under other sections also. Is it clear, sir?
Sir,
is it clear?
I think I'll just ask the member if the question has been answered.
Because this is very, very important question, and I think I have answered as to my knowledge. And if he is satisfied, otherwise I will take it further.
So I would request the member if we can just put in the comment saying that if this answers your question or not. I think we'll wait for sir to get a reply from sir. I'll move to the next question in the meantime, sir.
Yes.
This is pertaining to police filing the application of cancellation of corruption cases. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So in a case, the police has filed application for cancellation of corruption case. The court does not accept the request and choose to proceed with trial. Prosecution is directed to obtain sanction. The same refused by the competent authority. Whether court has to discharge the accused or has to have any alternative. Can a complainant has any remedy against refusal of grant of sanction in such case?
Here the court cannot take, doesn't have any resort to, and he is only to discharge the accused. Court even cannot ask the person to take the charge, sanction. It is the prerogative. And here I will also refer one more thing. It is a very proper to address that also, which I have not uninterrogatorily not dealt with. If a case, take this another example. A case is there against accused 1, A. During the process of evidence, it comes that another accused was also there along with him, who also needs to be tried in the same trial. Now, whether that accused can be summoned. Now, this will answer whether that accused can be summoned under 319, because sanction is not there. No, he cannot. At the most, if the PP makes a request that he should be summoned, he can say, the court can say, no, PP sir, please bring the sanction. Just bring the sanction on the basis of this material and then come with, I cannot summon him. This is Palvinder Singh versus Dilawar Singh case by the Supreme Court. That under 319, a person cannot be summoned in corruption case. So is here that he cannot have any remedy against the accused against which the cancellation has been filed. So far as the case of the complainant is concerned, yes, if he can file, he can opt to file, he can afford to file, but then he can challenge it in the court, because now it has been clearly laid down that if the prosecution agency has a grievance, now complainant is within the prosecution agency, he can request it, the prosecution agency. But court cannot do anything without that sanction.
So, now, sir, moving to something similar, but now this is talking about police, public servant responsibilities and his official duties. So the question is,
pardon, public servant?
Public servant official duties. So the question is, police refuse to seek sanction, saying the act of public servant not within discharge of official duties, and challan is presented.
Under 197 of the PCA, not 197 of the IPC, Criminal Procedure Code, not PC Act. Because when it is, now see, there's a marked distinction. First, I will say here, let me get the clearance about the question. There are two things. One is PC Act. There are four offenses are mentioned. So far, active not in discharge of official duty is there. That is only in 197. So first is that I think it is confined only to 197, if I'm not wrong. Is it?
Sir, the question has another part to it. If I can read the full question. Probably
yes, please.
So we spoke about the challan was presented. And then how the question is about how the magistrate will determine at the framing of charge whether act of public servant is within discharge of his official duties. In case it can only be determined after evidence, then the entire purpose of the provision will be frustrated. So the question now is, what would be the yardstick to determine the same?
See, I will like to go to the when we were having a discussion over this issue, that what is the difference between 197 and 19 PC Act. See, 19 PC Act is only confined to sections, but 197 is confined to the fact that an act which is or in discharge of duty or purported discharge of duty. Right? Then when this is so, just 1 minute.
Sure.
No, when this is so that the court is in dilemma whether the act is in discharge of duty or not, how he should proceed. Even if he comes to know that no, it appears to be, but the other party is saying that it is not in discharge of duty, then the answer which has been given by Supreme Court in Prakash Singh Badal's, which is the slide on the screen, the question relating to the need of sanction under 197 of the code is not necessarily to be considered as soon as complaint is lodged and then the allegations contained therein. So one part is answered that if there is no sanction, it is not to be seen, though it is written that no court shall take the cognizance can be taken. This question may arise at any stage of the proceedings. The question whether sanction is necessary or not may have to be determined from stage to stage. Now say if the sanction charge is framed, trial is started, and during the process of evidence, it comes to the decision or it comes to the on the record of the court that no, it has been done, wrong has been done. This act in fact is in discharge of official duty. There was an order why the firing was made. Then at that stage, it will be considered proper to scientize the case and ask the prosecution to go and bring the sanction if they want to continue the case and discharge the accused for the time being.
So,
is it clear?
So I think I have to wait for the member to reply to this.
But yes, you must get the reply because otherwise I will make it clear with some other example.
But I think the members are replying back with the kind of detailing that you're giving. I think everyone is happy with the answers and they are able to understand.
So I welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So the question now is about what will be the effect of non-proving of sanction?
Non-proving of sanction. Yes. See, one thing is there that taking the cognizance. Second is proving of the sanction. Two parts are there. One is proving it as invalid. That will be, of course, but now this is a document which only is required to start the proceedings. Subsequent, it has no effect, basically, right? But if, and that is why in 465 CRPC and in subsections 2, 3, 4 of the PC Act, 19 PC Act, I will show it. Just 1 minute, please. No. No court, no, this is notwithstanding anything contained in the Code of Criminal Procedure, no finding, sentence, or order passed by a special judge shall be reversed or altered by the court in appeal, confirmation, revision on the ground of absence of or any error, omission, or irregularity in the sanction required under Section 1. Unless in the opinion of the court, a failure to justice has in fact been occasioned thereby. If no non-proving will not effect, even all the subsections, no court shall stay the proceedings under this act on the ground of any error, omission, or irregularity. And otherwise also, no court is to stay any proceeding in any revision, any appeal, or anything on any ground. So my submission is, with regard to this question, that if that has not been proved, it will not make any effect if he has not been so prejudiced by the non-proving. If decision has been given by the court of appeal revision will not look into it. He will have to prove that prejudice has been caused to the accused by non-proving of that sanction. But it is incumbent on the prosecution simultaneously that they should not left it unproved. They should not left it unproved. So it is only for the court if it is to decide the case at that time. And whenever such a case is there, since I had also worked in court, whenever it is argued in court that they have not proved the sanction, say inadvertence comes to the knowledge of the prosecution immediately, and they can move an application under 313 part 2 that it is expedient in the interest of justice. And then I think though it will not make any difference, but no case will be there in which it is not proved. It is just a hypothetical that sanction will not be proved.
Sir, so with your permission, I'll move to the next session, next question, sir.
Yes, definitely, sir.
So the question is, if sanction is not granted, then what would be the fate of the complainant?
It is similar to the earlier question, if I am not wrong, only the wording is different.
Yes, sir. That's why I raised it.
It is the same question, nothing, he cannot do anything. At the most, he can go to the court or move the prosecution that why you are not moving for the sanction. Because, see, there are two things. An investigating agency, to my mind, is free to see that whether it is a fit case for sending it to the sanctioning authority. If the evidence has not been collected to the extent that it is fit case, they can definitely sentence as untraced or cancel. They are within their power to send such a report under section 173, because final report includes cancellation and untraced also. But yes, of course, if he is any grievance, he can ask the prosecution agency. But similarly, as if a complaint is there and the prosecution sends the case where cancellation, opportunity of hearing can be given. Similarly, while accepting the report, he can be asked, okay, this is the cancellation report which has been filed. But since here the case is a bit different, a sanctioning authority has not been asked. So see, first police is to see it, and then the sanctioning authority is to see it. Sanctioning authority is to be moved only if there is a foolproof case. That only whether the sanctioning authority considered it fit to cross that the case should cross the sentinels of the court. Otherwise, he can refuse. The sanctioning authority can refuse. So here also they are within their power to cancel the case or send it as untraced.
I think this was a question by a couple of other members as well. So that's the reason I raised this question, because this question was raised by members.
Yes, several persons. I do, because this is a problematic. Actually, this is problematic because generally see time and again now see what is there in PC Act. Because I have said it is a detailed thing. In PC Act, sanction is required. In other cases, sanction is not required. If it is a case under general provisions of IPC, cancellation is filed, the court can take the cognizance even then under 190. And or he can ask the complainant that cancellation has been sent, he can move a protest petition. But here the law does not permit protest petition or otherwise. If the cancellation report is filed 2 times, the court can at the most return this case that no, make further investigation. But he cannot call the accused que no, you face the trial, come and face the trial, because 3C sanction is a hindrance is there in between. Now it has been held by our own High Court that if the case is moved twice for re-inquiry or the further investigation in the case on the submission of cancellation report or untraced report, then for the 3rd time, if they move the same report, the court cannot send it back. It has to be accepted. It is our own High Court authority.
So now question is about whether a complaint under PC Act can be directly filed in special court, and whether a special court can be sent it under section 156 subpart 3 of CRPC.
See, very important question, I will say, which was very pertinent under the old act. But now it is clear that it is to be filed before the court, and the competent court is, I will again say, is the magisterial court of the district session judge or the additional district and session judge, because they are the special judges so notified under the PC Act. They are court of original jurisdiction. So complaint is to be directly filed in the court of special judge, I will say, not additional session judge, special judge under PC Act. And when I say so, it means that he is a person competent to take the jurisdiction of the case as referred in 19563, who is otherwise competent to take the cognizance. 190. So if a person is competent to take the cognizance under 190, which is only the special judge under PC Act, so he will be the only person who can send it under 1563, or he can proceed under 200. But however, if it is under 197, sanction is required under 197, and then he is to move for an offence which is not concerned with PC Act, then of course he can move to the magisterial court. But here one thing is more, but the very I may or may not have been asked, a very pertinent question has come into my mind, that now suppose there is a case in which the sections of IPC and PC Act are also there. Now, officers, it is very important. Composite sanction is there, but PC Act has not been written in it, or a sanction is not at all there. You feel that the offences under 190C of PC Act are not made out, only offences IPC or other are made out, for which even the sanction is not required, or if it is required, it is there. Can you send the case after receiving it in your court directly to the magisterial court by ordering that, since it does not contain any act which is their offence under PC Act, I have not to frame the charge, and it is hereby sent back to the, not sent back, but sent to the magistrate for trial? No. If a case has been filed jointly under PC Act as well as under IPC sections, and you find that PC Act is not made out, you have to try it. You have to try it. You cannot send it to the lower court, because you are not acting as a session judge or additional session judge. You are acting as a special judge under the PC Act, in whose court the challan was put under PC Act. Similarly, since PC Act is not made out, or you find you have to try that case.
Certainly, sir. Sir, something related to 156 subpart 3 of CRPC.
Pardon?
I think, sir, the question is regarding the same section that we just spoken about, CRPC section 156 subpart 3. The question
Yes.
is, I think you have already answered it, but I just want the question to be reheard.
Yes, yes, please.
Question, sir, please guide vis-a-vis powers under section 156.3, subpart 3 of CRPC, core offenses under PC Act.
See, now, so far as under 1563 is concerned, definitely the power is with you. Power is with you as a special judge. Yes, you can send it. You can send it now. And no sanction is required now. Now see, earlier as per the authority M.K. Ayappa and L. Narayana Swamy, which is of 2016, it was clear that if you want to move a complaint under 200, which may be referred from a precognizance stage to the 1563 for investigation by the police, it must accompany the sanction. But now under the amended act, it is to be answered or asked subsequently if you reach the stage of 204 that go and bring the sanction. That sanction is not required at the beginning. You can definitely move the complaint under 1563 to the police on a precognizance stage. Go and investigate and report. That's all. I think question is addressed or not?
I think if the question is not addressed, the member can simply get back to us. But
please tell them to.
Sir, I think you have already answered this question, but I'll just ask it and you can just let me know, sir. Whether complaint can be filed directly in the Sessions Court?
Sir, here it is. What is here? See, the nomenclature which is used is not happy. I am not happy with that. It is a special judge. The complaint, yes, it is to be filed directly in the court of special judge under PC Act. And show the challan by the police.
So, next question is, can review of sanction be exercised even after commencement of trial or at appellate stage after accused has been convicted?
No, sir, no. Because review of sanction is of administrative part. What I have referred is that when the prosecution agency is having or investigating agency is having any legitimate grievance from the refusal, and they can send a new material. Now the question is, if new material has been sent before the sanction is granted, see, always sanction will be refused when review will be submitted. Now try to understand it clearly that if the sanction is granted, the accused cannot represent against it. Prosecution will require only the sanction to put it into court. Who will make a review? Review will be made only if the sanction is refused at the first instance, because the very process which has resulted into of investigation, which has resulted into the preparing of the case, say challan, to put into the court requires a document, so-called sanction, which is, I said from the beginning, that it is a conscious decision of the competent authority. Now, if the decision is there, say in form of sanction which has been granted, challan will be put in court, charge will be framed. Now, even if after the charge is framed, the review will not be required. Review will be required only if the sanction is first refused. Prosecution is not able to put the challan in court. They will ask for review either on some new material or on the grievance that you have not checked properly the documents which have been sent to you for looking into, or you have initiated an inquiry or again those 5 cases, you have made an exceeded your power, you have committed an error of law, you have taken a decision which no other officer or the authority would have taken in these circumstances or these matters, or it is you have abused the process of law, you have abused the process of your authority, then again it will be there moved and sanction will be granted. So I think it is a more I will word it as a hypothetical question that a review will not be made at the instance of the accused. Review will not be made because he cannot represent against the sanction. Review cannot be made or will not be made if sanction has already been granted and challan has been presented. Who will make the review? Who will apply for review? If they want to now discharge the accused on the basis of that certain evidences they are not there, they will move the court or they will move a cancellation. Review of sanction will not be required in that case, what I feel.
So I'll move to the next question. This question is, first of all, Mr. Sandeep Singh, who's the ADJ, has given his greetings to you.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Sandeep.
And he's asking about if sanction under IPC and PCA Acts are to be granted by different authorities. So would that mean that you'll have 2 sanctions?
A question which can be addressed by referring to these 2 sections 197 and 19 as to the competent authority. Now, I told you one thing, that so far as 197 is concerned, this sanction is to be given only qua the employees who are gazetted employees. Gazetted employees employed in connection with the affairs of the state, gazetted employees appointed in connection with the affairs of the union. Now, so far as under 19 is concerned, it is only by the person who is authorized to remove him from office. Now, take the case of an IAS officer. I will explain it by taking the case of an IAS officer. Now, here there are 2 different authorities under 197 and under PC Act. If a person is IAS officer who has been employed in connection with the affairs of the state of Punjab, and section 120B is there, for which section under 197 is required, then definitely the sanctioning authority will be state of Punjab. But simultaneously, if it is under 19 PC Act also, now it is the person and who is removable from the state, but he is employed in connection with the affairs of the state. Now here, so far as sanction under 19 PC Act will be required, it will be required to be given by the central government. Now when I refer to composite sanction, now central government is an authority which is bigger than the state government authority. But yes, in this case, there can be 2 sanctions, but there can be also 1 composite sanction which can be granted by the central government. Because even if sanction for 197 is not there and the act is not in discharge of proper duty, because generally it has been held by the Supreme Court in several cases that the cases under tampering of record, entering into conspiracy, entering into other offenses like cheating, forgery, they do not require sanction under 197 because they are not the offenses purporting to have been discharge of duty or as a discharge of duty. So here the sanction only 19 PC Act will be required. But simultaneously, if sanction is also asked for any of these types acts which are there under 197 requiring sanction, then it can be given by as a composite sanction and by separately also. Both ways. Both ways. Sandeepji, both ways it can be given. But if it is composite, because it is mine has also been applied for that act, So I think there is nothing wrong in it. It is by a higher authority.
Certainly, sir.
But of course, it will be good if two separate sanctions are taken.
I think that certainly answers the question, sir. Sir, Ms. Harsimran Deep Kaur has conveyed her regards and has said that she's a very informative session that you have taken, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ji.
And the question is that whether the act where the act in it is done by the government employee while in service and question sanction arises subsequent to his retirement, then what needs to be done?
Yes. Now, this thing that subsequent to his retirement, if now it arises after 2018, sanction is required. Sanction is required if it is now is to be given in the court, because now after the amendment they have added is or was a public servant when the offense was committed. I will show it. This is old. Now which was the old section? Old was no court shall take cognizance of an offense punishable under section under these in case of person who is employed in connection with the affairs. Who is? So only here, when under the old act, the retirement was there. So after the retirement, the person was not protected by the umbrella of the section 19, and the challan could have been presented without sanction under the old act. But now here is the rider. If the sanction has been moved during his service, if the sanction has been moved during his service and that has been refused, and they waited for, okay, there are only 4 months to retire, we will be filing the challan after retirement, then Chittaranjan Das decision of the Supreme Court will come into force and the challan cannot be presented because mind has been applied by the sanctioning authority and sanction has been refused. But if no sanction has been moved and the person has retired, yes, under the old act, the same could have been presented after retirement because the demittance of office will take the protection away from him. But under the new act, what is there? The very act is the wording in case of a person who is employed or as the case may be was at the time of commission of the alleged offense employed in connection with the affairs of union. So here, just on the analogy as it was strongly felt that when under 197 this protection is available to both retired as well as to the serving employees, why it is not to the retired and serving employees under PC Act? This has been extended to the retired employees also. So now demitting of the office, retirement or the resigning will not make any difference and sanction will be required. Madam.
This brings us to the last question for this today's webinar. The question is, if the sanction once granted is not challengeable by the accused, and if the accused moves the application in the court, challenging it on the ground or other, what needs to be done by the court if it has already been framed, the charges, or in case the framed charges are yet to be framed?
See, this I have discussed validity of this I have discussed in validity of sanction. I have specifically said it that validity of sanction can be taken at 2 stages. One at the initial stage and the second even at the end during the time of arguments. As in Nanjappa's case of 2020. Now see, very apt is that when sanction is there, the accused wants to challenge it, he cannot challenge it on administrative side. He can say now on what grounds he will be challenging it. Either the authority is not competent or it is invalid. But the material and the discretion cannot be gone into by the court that whether it has been rightly or wrongly given. Yes, it can be only that whether it is by competent authority or not. Only then that will make invalid in mind of the court. See, that is why I discussed in detail, though the time was short. I could not have discussed in that detail competency of the authority. Who is authority competent? If the authority competent is not actually the person who is giving the sanction, is not competent, then of course the person can say to the court, but the material which has been gone into by the sanctioning authority cannot even gone into by the court, because that is only the discretion. If the sanction has been granted, ifs and buts cannot be there in the sanction. But yes, if it is not by the competent authority, then it can be challenged by way of application at both these stages, at the initial stage also, at the subsequent stage also. And the court can go into it at both these stages. But if the evidence is required, as it was held in Prakash Singh Badal's case, that if evidence is to be dealt with, then it will be seen at a subsequent stage. Then there was another authority on this. I will show to it. You can read that, madam. I have cited this authority clearly, knowing it fully that this will be a question.
I think you've cited a lot of authorities, sir, during your session.
That is why I have cited. This is P.K. Pradhan versus State of Sikkim.
Yeah.
It is to be held that evidence is to be led in the court to come to the conclusion that sanction was not properly accorded. So it will be taken at a subsequent stage. So read this authority, whosoever officer has made this question. I think matter will be clear, otherwise they can talk to me at any time. I am at their disposal.
And I think that's a wonderful thing to say. And I think, like we said in the starting, that you have served the Vigilance Department for the longest time. And now you've joined the Academy as a faculty member. I think it is very evident, it's very clear that your purpose of joining the Academy is only to serve the members and only to help people, to
Thank you.
So
thank you.
Everyone understands that.
Thank you very much.
So if you allow me, sir, I would like to give a vote of thanks, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I would like to say one thing, just a few words, that in this period of 6 or 7 years which I have served in the Academy, I feel more satisfied than the service which I have served as the Punjab government, even as a joint director and district governor for so many years.
That's actually a very big statement, sir. And I think you're just being true to what you just said. So,
thank you.
So you're saying something, sir? Sir, can I give a vote of thanks, or do you want to add something?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So on behalf of Chennai Judicial Academy and on behalf of SCC Online, I, Chetan Singh Gill, would like to thank all the lordships, leaderships, all the members from PNH Judicial Services who have joined us today. For almost like 2 hours, we've been on this webinar. I hope this session was fruitful. And on behalf of everyone, I'm still getting a lot of compliments on the chats for Mehta sir, saying that people are really in debt for attending this session and for your sharing your wisdom. So, sir, on behalf of everyone, I would thank everyone for joining us, and I would like to thank Mehta sir for taking our time and for sharing his wisdom with us, sir.
I am also thankful to everyone. Thank you very much, officers and my dogs and shipping. Thank you very much.
I will believe this webinar will be available on YouTube, and the link can be taken from the Academy by Friday evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you, sir.